We're taping? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 6:30. Welcome to the Wednesday, April 27th, 2022 Board of Education work session. We're going to start with the alternative education campuses. Mr. Chamberlain? Not for work sessions.
Or the pledge. You know, it's like we're out of America.
I don't know why. That's the way they've done it before.
All right, good evening. Jeff Chamberlain, Executive Director of Learning Services. Thank you for this time this evening. The reason that I'm here tonight is to discuss with you our alternative education campuses. We have two in the district, Patriot High School, and then we also charter Goal Academy. Next slide. There we go. The first school that I want to talk to you about is Patriot High School. And one of the main components that is important about an alternative education campus is that these campuses are set up for at-risk students. And 90% of Patriot High School students are considered at-risk youth. And this is based on the current risk factors that are identified through CDE. The three most common are credit deficient students, students with IEPs, and students with a history of mental illness. Patriot High School currently ranges between 80 to 135 students in grades 9 through 13. And the important thing that I wanted to, and I highlighted in that second paragraph for you, is that it's a choice-based school that serves students in all three geographical zones in D49, as well as students from outside of D49's boundaries. And I think that that's important because it gives our community, basically all of Colorado Springs, a choice for their students. The last paragraph there goes into their schedule, 6-hour-long periods and 1 30-minute advisory period, Monday through Thursday, and a flexible Friday where the students attend tutoring, credit recovery classes, and intervention groups. This next slide is a snapshot of where they performed on our last 2019 data, and they were a performance plan, and that means that they met the majority of the metrics that the state of Colorado has identified for the school. Later on in the presentation, there's a link for those. Our next school that I would like to talk with you about this evening is Goal Academy. Goal Academy is an online alternative education campus with 95% of the students qualifying as at risk. The majority of their students or their at-risk factors these are some of them, but they're not limited to just these, as a history of absenteeism, teen pregnancy, students who have dropped out of school previous to enrolling in Goal Academy, and they have student and family mental health issues, multiple suspensions, previous school expulsion, and student-parent drug use. Goal Academy operates 36 drop-in sites throughout the state of Colorado. And it's important to note that while many schools experienced a decline in enrollment during the COVID pandemic, Goal Academy actually had an increased enrollment of 344 students with a total of 5,308 students. I feel that this is a very important campus for D49, especially if we talk about leading. We are taking the lead and we are giving these students a very significant opportunity. And I feel like it's important, and I commend our chiefs for carrying that charter, because there are some things that come along with that that could be considered detrimental, but it's the right thing to do for our community and the right thing to do for our kids. The next slide is their performance snapshot. And they met 3 out of 4 of their metrics, performing at a 63.6%. So that puts them as a performance school, just like Patriot. This link here is a link that will take you to those snapshots. It's a CDE webpage that you can interact with those snapshots. You can roll over and click on certain items, and it will break the information down for you and give you a much better detailed view. That being said, is there any questions at this time that I can try to answer for you?
What is the difference between who gets sent to goal and who gets sent to Patriot? What determines the?
Yeah, Patriot is a choice, so they can choice into that. I imagine there are some conversations if it is are you talking like a disciplinary action?
There's some common factors I saw on their IEP, mental illness, and so on. What determines whether a child goes to Patriot or goal, or is that their choice?
That would be a choice. Yes. Anyone else?
It's a parental choice
Yeah.
or guardian choice.
I'm curious, how many of our kids at Patriot are choiced in from out of district?
That is a good question that I did
I've got
not.
that. 10.
10. Okay.
10.
Then second question, how many of the kids at Goal are actually kids who reside in our district?
133.
In addition to Patriot being an alternative education campus, it's also where we have our construction and our culinary schools. And that's a big draw as well.
Thank you, Brett. Any more questions?
I did want to mention a story I heard when I was visiting Goal. A young lady was expecting in so many months, and where she was not very motivated before to finish her credits to get high school, she counted back how many months from from delivery, and like pushed in 20-something units just to get her high school diploma. And I thought that was a really sweet story.
Yeah, you hear that a lot. You hear a lot of good stories coming out of there. Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Goal Academy tends to graduate somewhere between 600 and 800 students or more throughout the whole state. I've been at graduations where a young lady will come to get her diploma, holding her baby, and mom, the grandmother, is right behind and got the GED, and they were the first ones to get a high school or a GED in their family ever. So the opportunity that Goal presents throughout the state is very, very significant.
I agree. Thank you very much.
So I think that we need board consensus to move forward for action. That's the next one. Okay, 1.2, Coordinator of Early Childhood.
Good evening, Board Chiefs. Dr. Nancy Lamont, Executive Director of Individualized Education. I'm here to present a reclassification of a existing job. The current position is Dean of Early Childhood Education. That position has existed for about the last 4 years, but it has truly been operating as an administrative position. It oversees all of the regulations and requirements for early childhood education, both from the CDE and from the Department of Human Services. The position is also responsible for student growth and achievement, for the licensing requirements that we have to meet through DHS, for the requisition and selection of early childhood and early childhood special educators. That includes then their performance evaluations. That's about 17 licensed staff at this point and 2 ESPs. And with the arrival of universal preschool, this position is even going to take on a greater administrative presence within the district. So I am requesting that the position be changed from Dean of Early Childhood Education to Coordinator of Early Childhood Education, and the budget impact has been factored into the 22-23 school year budget. Any questions? Sorry, I'm done.
Yeah, this was approved. Okay,
Yes, it's in the model. They're in the staffing models.
Rick? So I'm going to ask for 2 consensus. The last one wasn't written on the sheet, but it is in the cover sheet. to move that forward. So I'm going to ask for this particular one, Coordinator of Early Childhood Education Job Description. Do I have consensus to move it forward to the regular meeting?
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes, move that forward. And Alternative Education Campuses approval need to also be moved forward. Do I have consensus to move that one forward? It's the one we talked about before.
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes. Okay, now we have the voice of the student.
Good evening, members of the board and chief officers. Do you guys have this? Just right here, yeah. Okay. Got it. Good evening. So I'm here to talk to you all about our Culture and Climate Survey, Voice of the Students. Please excuse my voice. I've been a little bit under the weather. Unpacking this information is quite an exhaustive endeavor. You get a lot of feedback on all ends of the spectrum from students when you look at this. And so my goal tonight, in my brief time with you, is to kind of give you a general consensus of the great work that our district is doing and the feedback from our students, as well as maybe some opportunities for us to move forward and take that information and grow and learn from and be better. Objective of the survey every year is we issue this survey to our parents and our workforce and our students, elementary students, beginning with grade 3 through our 12th grade students. The survey is anonymous, and we use the results for continuous improvement projects and discussions moving forward each and every year. Of course, with the pandemic, that has put a wrench into things just due to the nature of trying to figure out how to educate students through that time. And so what I've done is I have referenced back to different periods of this survey. And really what I have found is, of course, 2018 and 2019, and then into 2020, there's some discrepancies. But what I'll try and do is give you a little bit of a comparative model on just a few of these things. So it offers you maybe a sense of trend. Our completion rates, I'm very proud of. Definitely even more opportunity to improve next year. However, our elementary students, we had just over a 99% completion rate, and secondary students 87.4%. And as you can imagine, that is a success working with secondary students to get them to complete a survey. So really proud of the quality and the quantity of the feedback that we've been able to gather from this. Our demographics breakdown are there, you can see, and really what you see here is the elementary demographic breakdown that mirrors very closely the eclectic student body that we have in the district, just to offer kind of a glimpse at who has accessed the survey and completed the survey. And as you can see at the top here, we have almost an even split between male and female students at the elementary level, at the secondary level very close as well, and a nice breakdown of the demographics. Interesting. I did check 2019, and so this is an elementary breakdown of the question, what do you like most about school? And you'll see that recess is up there, as well as physical education, and then you'll see other. And so in other, there is a series of comments, and it's really interesting. I take some time to look through that, and really one of the commonalities there is teachers. A lot of kids like their teachers as well as their friends in that social environment. One of the things that I did want to show you a trend on is the reading from this year being 21-22 school year. From the 1920 school year, reading was at about 9%. And so although just about a 3% decrease, I do look at that as a trend. Very interested to see what the data shows us next year in that. Obviously, at the elementary level, reading is a huge component. So we'll track that, and we'll look at what may or may not have had an effect on that. But almost across the board, it is almost identical from that prior survey to this survey. Recess. Very important that our staff and students feel safe. And so for elementary students, we're seeing that about 86% of students stated that they feel safe at school. The difference between the surveys here for elementary and secondary, just so you know, is they're not identical surveys with identical questions or anything like that. And you'll see the breakdown of the data I'll show you how that measures and is displayed in the secondary here in just a minute. For our elementary students, it's really not much of a scaled question. It's more of a yes or no question. And so it offers us a little bit more of that objective yes or no, whereas secondary, you get a little bit of the kind of the subjective feedback in that. But 86% of students feel safe at school, which is great, but we look through our SCAT committee and other endeavors to identify how to keep our students and staff safe as we move forward. Elementary students, 95% of elementary students surveyed stated that their school has clear rules for behavior, as we've discussed and talked about quite in depth, that dysregulation of behavior is something that our teachers are struggling with our students. And as we identify and talk about really exciting things to come on how to support that moving forward, we first want to understand, are the rules made clear? And according to the feedback we got from our elementary kiddos, that 95% of those students do believe that. About 95% of the students also stated that they feel that the adults in the school care about them. And as we've had other conversations about that, as students come in and offer some vulnerability to access learning, we need them to have that trusting relationship with the teacher, and that's an important feedback for us. And so I was very pleased to see that as well. Approximately 57% of students stated that they feel their classroom is a place they can focus and learn without a lot of noise and distraction. And so as we look at that, we think a little bit about that balance of the kind of sit and get type of instruction in contrast to the experiential learning opportunities that we get to see in our elementary schools. And I think that there is a necessary balance of that. But I also am aware that due to the nature of the behavior that we have seen lately, that could also be having an effect on the learning environment. And so we take all of this into account as to how that's affecting the learning environment, as well as the opportunity for quality instruction from our teachers. And as Peter is really helping us lead the charge on supporting that very intentionally, I'm very enthusiastic and very excited about what the next year holds for us and our ability and our strategic efforts to support that. I'm very interested at what the data will show us next year. As you can see here, the way the scale breaks down, the fine print there on the on the vertical scale is a little bit tough to make out. But what we have here on the horizontal scale is a 0 to 10, with the questions to our secondary students being, you strongly agree, you would mark 10, you strongly disagree, you would mark 0. And so that'll kind of give you just an added glimpse at this. And so the adults at my school really care about me, so that you can see that on the far right, that number is about 16% of our secondary students feel strongly that the adults at my school really care about me. And then it deciphers a little bit, but you can see between the 5 and the 10 is where the majority of our students land, and that's a really nice sign for me. Also, secondary students shared which adult they feel they can talk to at school, with just north of 77% being a teacher and roughly 40% of that being a school counselor. And so as we're talking about supporting dysregulated students and different things like that, we are really wanting to understand how to empower our teachers with the tools necessary to create a conducive learning environment and really support those students that are feeling that they're dysregulated by something. This data shows that those students have a trusting relationship with their teacher, and that's something we want to lean into. Also, talking about the dangers of drug and alcohol, and especially with the news of fentanyl use lately, we're curious about the feedback of students on drug and alcohol use. And so they say students share if drug and alcohol use by students is a serious problem. This is secondary students share with us that about 20% strongly agree, and that is concerning to me and our district, of course. And so as we look at the safety and the security of our students, that's something that we take to heart and look at proactive ways to support that high need. We talk about the student mental health in our district right now, and we look at the state of depression and the potential for seriously harming themselves. So I can tell you that as I've supported suicide risk assessments this year and the qualitative nature of some of those being very scary, I do look at the majority of our students ranking this at a 1, which means that they strongly disagree that they have had serious thoughts about harming themselves. However, the alert And the concerning number that I see here is the percentage of 10% of our students strongly agreed that they have considered harming themselves this year. And that is scary for me and something that we need to pay attention to. Safe to Tell, I believe it has the capacity to save lives, and about 64% of our secondary students felt that if there was danger to a friend or a family member, that they would reach out to Safe to Tell. A few quick comments as I wrap up. One from each. Something that makes me happy at school is my teachers, because they always make me feel welcome. Secondary students about their community. These adults make me feel safe and they care. And about anxiety or depression, bad home life. And thank you for your time. If you have any questions that I could help answer, I'd be more than happy to try.
We'll start from left to right. Rick?
So you had started to talk about a little comparative information at the beginning, and then we kind of dropped that off. And I was just curious on some of the numbers that we were looking at on the earlier slides. Do we have, and are we going to have, I guess, a dashboard of some sort that gives us, you know, a good snapshot where we can kind of absorb the depth and detail of some of this and see where some of the comparisons might be? And because this is a lot to absorb, but it's frankly scary stuff.
Yes, we do have that information, and so what I would be more than happy to do is to really dig into that and unpack that, and if we could work together to find out really where we want to focus that. These surveys and the results that we get from them are pretty exhaustive, and so one of the things I would really like to understand is really where I could supply a better comparison of data, and then I can certainly do that and offer those compare and contrast models for you.
Okay. Lori? Ivy?
I have several questions, okay? First of all, elementary school, are the parents filling them out? I can't imagine a first grader sitting up there answering these questions, so who's filling out the elementary?
Yes, so we do offer parent survey for our elementary students. It's sent directly to parents, but our elementary students are offered an opportunity during school hours to answer the questions.
So these were elementary kids' answers that we're looking at?
Correct, great, yes. For elementary, it's grades 3 through 5. Yes.
Which is
Yes.
why that number, the total N for elementary, looks half as big as it should be, because we don't test, or we don't survey K2.
So my next question is about the 43% of the students who cannot focus because it's too whatever. Of course, that goes right in line with what some of the teachers talked about, that the behavior is so bad that they can't teach. So what practical solutions, immediate or long-term, have you already discussed for that?
To stabilize the behavior in the classroom?
To minimize the behavior so teachers can teach, they don't feel like they're just babysitters, so to speak. And
Sure.
so the students also feel like, I can hear the teacher, I'm learning something. So it's not that, I mean, I'm glad to see that number. Not that it's a great number, but it validates what the teachers are perceiving, which is, I cannot teach because the kids are misbehaving.
Yeah, absolutely. We're well aware of that, and really designing a really intentional tiered support plan that we're very excited about, that I'm looking forward to the opportunity to present to you. Very excited about what that has to do moving forward. But in the current standing of the situation, we leaned into a number of different things that the district utilizes, one of which being a restorative processes district, where we rebuild the relationship with the student and the learning environment, as well as that instructor, that teacher, and their peers. And so I've been on the front lines of seeing that be very successful, and other times where that hasn't quite worked. And then what we do is we look to hold students accountable and offer them the opportunity to see where that they are in control of the choices moving forward. And then as we work to support those students, we offer a very tailored response to anything that's regarding discipline, appropriate to the age and appropriate to the policy violation, which would allow them to come back into the school and not have a repeat of that behavior. And so, for example, as we partner with our law enforcement agencies and as we partner with the court systems, and we look at anything from substance abuse to truancy to physical violence, we tailor our approach for that restorative process as well as the programming of the discipline procedure to meet the needs of that student to garner a skill. For me, it's a lagging skill. So as they come back in, they have a toolkit now not to have a repeat of that behavior. In the classroom, when it's an insubordination situation, what we look at is we look at the relational capacity of the teacher to the student and opportunities for improvement through that. And so that comes by way of leaning into our counselors as well as our instructional coaches and our teacher evaluation processes to understand how we can better mitigate further incidents with students. And we put that all together and we analyze what we can do better moving forward, what's working, what's not, and then we devise a plan. And that's where we stand today, where we're being led by Peter Hills in a very intentional process to really support the behavior in our classrooms.
I'm sorry.
If I may, that's part of one of our strategic or operational priorities, right?
Yes, sir.
What is
Yes,
the
sir.
name of it?
I would say that it's part of two of them. Improving culture, this is certainly under the umbrella of improving culture, but it's specifically the responsive de-escalation model that we've really been working on for a couple of years.
When do we get briefed on that?
So right now, our intent, and we got nods at the last meeting, is that we would present that at the July regular meeting, and we'll be rolling that out with new administrators and willing administrators and some pilot sites in this coming school year.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
I'm sorry, just about kids, so I have several more questions.
Can we actually take turns?
Okay, can I ask one more? So I was shocked at the 90+% of kids that understand the rules. That's shocking. Given how much misbehavior that's being reported, how do you analyze that? What do you do with that information that?
So for me, I really feel like it's there's a couple different terms for this really, but really what that is to me is something called the arousal continuum. And so what we look at is we look at students coming into our classrooms in a calm state of mind. And really what that is in a developing prefrontal cortex, they're accessing whatever prefrontal cortex they have in order to remain calm and allow their mind to be vulnerable enough to latch on to access learning of content, new content. And so what I realize is that as some of our students come in with circumstances, maybe in the recent past or the far past, they get stuck in the limbic system or the amygdala of their brain. And I really truly believe it comes down to brain science to say that this triggering effect for a student and seeing the dysregulation in the behavior manifest requires an understanding and a lens on the antecedent of the notion of not just what proceeded within the 10 minutes prior to that behavior, but really what the story of that student is and understanding why they are being triggered versus so we're responding to the cause versus the manifested behavior and seeking to understand. I believe through the process of seeking to understand, we can get to a much better place. And so that in and of itself is one of many different ideas I think that exist in our district in order to support the behavior. And I think one of the great things that I feel that we have right now is a very healthy environment to bring these different mindsets and ideas to the table to answer that question and then really act on the discussion that we're having there.
Is it safe to say that the students basically summarizing, I'm just paraphrasing to my understanding. The students understand the rules, they just don't have the maturity or the ability to control themselves and violate the rules.
So one of the questions I ask our staff sometimes is, do you believe that if all kids could do good, they would? And a lot of folks will shake their head yes. And then so my question to them is, then why do they act out? Why do they misbehave? And I think, so yes, Mr. Graham, yes, they understand the rules, but I truly believe that it's not always within the choice. And I believe kids act on what it is that is operating as a pleasure principle for them, as well as a protection of armor. So what creates a dissatisfaction or a feeling of dysregulation to them in any way, shape, or form, they're gonna avoid. And sometimes that avoidance comes out in behaviors. And so, yes, I believe that, 90% of our students, I believe that question specifically was for elementary students, 90% of our students understand those rules. And that's even more alarming because then we say, okay, why are we having such a high number of behavioral concerns?
So it's basically the same thing parents go through raising their kids, right? Kids know the
Absolutely.
rules, kids misbehave, kids throw a tantrum, blah, 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 because kids are developing and they're learning and all that other stuff, all the child psychology that's gone into these things for the last 40-something years.
Exactly. They're learning how to behave and survive and then hopefully thrive within an ever-changing environment.
So I have a question on the 57% focus, not being able to, or thinking that they could focus and learn without distractions. I don't think all of those distractions are behavioral. I think it would be very important for us to really look at what's going on in the classroom setting. For example, how the students are sitting, where they're sitting, the activities they're doing, the technology that they're using, the small group activities that are going on in the background that could stem from being distracted by the environment that they're in, not necessarily the behavior. So or like misbehaviors. So that would be something for us to really look into. I don't know if you have any ideas or take on that.
I really don't. I feel like I'd be stepping out of my lane if I said that I had an answer to that. I don't think that there's a cookie cutter environment for the best learning to happen. And I'm a believer that it begins with the relationship of the instructor and the individuals in that classroom. And then I think that there are certain things that can be distracting to certain students and learning in that environment. And so I definitely think that there's opportunity to analyze that and lean into those experts that could provide a better answer than I could.
Who are those experts in our district?
Yeah, they're everywhere, and I think from a positional standpoint, I think that those folks that have had an opportunity to do instructional rounding, I've learned a lot through that, as well as our evaluation systems. So those administrators that do that, as well as our instructional coaches, and then veteran teachers, and really learning through a collaboration portal and so through our PLCs and different things like that, we strive to become better every day. And so I think we try and lean into those assets that we have.
Can I finish that thought? I know it's your question, but so when I took my tours, I noticed the seating, the cute seating, where you can swirl and lounge. And at first, try not to be a poo-poo type of person. I thought, oh, how about a cute idea? But I have to think about, we just were talking about it. When I'm lounging, I'm going to fall asleep. And so is it wise to have lounging cushions in a classroom for kids? I mean, it's a cute idea maybe for their downtime, but is it the best physical environment for their learning? And then along those lines, if they're on the computer a lot, they tend to be wiggly. And so I would love to see the district, because again, I don't want to see something and go, oh, I don't think that's a good idea. I try to look at everything. Are some of these other factors, other than noise or home problems or whatever, are they possibly contributing to the lack of learning? Because it's almost too easygoing. It's almost too unrestricted. Just a question. I don't know because I'm not an educator.
Yeah, that's hard for me to answer without understanding the
Jason,
the
if I
environment.
can,
Yeah.
what is that seating she's talking about? Do you know what that is?
So
Before you ask.
specifically, I know Ms. DeVol and Ms. Lou are referring to the different kinds of choice seating that are available through Empower FZ, which is really very strongly research-based, primarily based in some work by John Hattie, that giving students clear learning expectations, giving them standard operating procedures or clarity about how they do things. So what they do would be learning objectives and learning targets. How they do it would be standard operating procedures, giving them optional ways to demonstrate mastery or proficiency, and giving them choice of where to sit. There's no question that combination of practices in classrooms is well founded in the research. It has positive effect sizes anywhere from 0.5 up to over 1, which is anything approaching 1 is remarkably high. So there's good research foundation for that. The variable seating arrangements or classroom environment arrangements, the purpose is to engage the learner. And so in Empower FZ, that word empower was chosen very carefully because the purpose is to engage the learner by empowering them to know what they're supposed to do, to how they're supposed to behave, what they're supposed to be learning. And we're going to see those, you'll see it not just on our internal data, Acadience and STAR, but you're going to see it on your CMAS data as well. The classrooms that are very committed to that and are doing it with fidelity are showing less behavior issues and more academic performance. And the students don't fall asleep.
Okay, especially on the bouncy ball. I'll have a follow-on question, but I'm sorry, can you finish the rest of it? I just want to know a definition of what the seating was called. Thanks.
Yeah, and we see that a lot, and there's, depending on, sometimes there's students with special needs and or maybe potentially a diagnosis where that would qualify the reasoning for that. But really, that would be hard for me to answer without really understanding the needs of that student or that environment. But I do see that be a very successful strategy to allow students to come in and feel comfortable. I can think of a few teachers off the top of my head that I've worked directly with where it's been a very welcoming environment to walk in, and kids have been very engaged as a result of that. But I do agree that there's probably those that could probably have a little bit more of a stricter expectation on the engagement if they're going to be offered something like that. But from what I've seen, from the most part, it's the pros completely outweigh the cons.
One thing I wanted to kind of touch on this idea, because I have a nephew who is on the autism spectrum, and the bouncy balls have been a game changer. Not bouncy balls, it's just the bouncy seating. It actually helps him focus. And so to do the one-size-fits-all cookie cutter doesn't always work with the kids. So I'm sorry. Let me speak here. Okay. And so one thing when I was going through the workbook for Capturing Kids' Hearts, they were also talking about in the teacher's training to determine which environment works best for a student. So I know that some students might need a quieter environment. When John and I went through experiencing dyslexia, one of the last classrooms, do you remember we had headsets on with multiple people talking at different levels, and she would bang a drawer shut in the distraction. And I know that some kids, even tapping a pen can help them focus. So it's really interesting to find out each one can need a different environment, whether it's seating, sound, or whatever. So that's why I think the teachers are really vital for understanding what each individual kid needs.
I agree.
I just want to make sure he answered your question after I interrupted for the definition.
Yeah, I'm not quite satisfied with your answer because obviously we have numbers. We're looking at numbers, right? With the current system, which we say by research is successful, but it's not based on the numbers. We have 43% of the kids who cannot focus. So do we encourage the teachers to try different things? Or are they stuck with all those different cushions and whatever they're using right now? Are they encouraged or allowed to experiment with different setups? Going back to perhaps a more strict setup, not strict, but more classroom-like as opposed to 20 kids lounging in 20 different positions. Again, I'm not against that. Right. When I first saw it, I thought, hey, that might be a good idea for them to learn. But maybe it's just because I'm an old lady that when I'm lounging, I'm going to fall asleep. So how, does that apply to younger kids that when they're lounging, they're just not going to pay attention? Not trying to prescribe any one thing, one answer per se, just like, are we looking at those other factors as to why our kids are not learning as well as they should?
The one thing I can say about that is that I do know that there's conversations. Now, I don't have any anecdotal, I can't reference anything specifically off the top of my head, but I do know that there is research that suggests and has supported the use of alternative seats and seating. And when you look at the project-based schools and different things like that, that's really kind of one of the things that they do is allowing the individual student to access the learning environment the way that they're most comfortable in. And so I think when you look at alternative seating methods and the different things like that. I think the idea is that what we're trying to do is create a conducive environment for learning based upon the individual needs of that student versus what looks neat and tidy to someone that's walking by a classroom. And so I can tell you, to answer your question a little bit, I can tell you that our teacher evaluation process has these very ingrained pebbles that you can work with to help work with the teacher and help them manage and strategize any obstacles that are existing within the classroom. And if alternative seating happens to be one of those, then they can approach that topic and talk to them about that. And so I think it's more based on the individual student population in that classroom, the teacher, the content, and all those different factors.
I know that we have psychologists under your department for the district. At what point are they used? Are they, how is I know because you lost a couple recently. How are psychologists used? Is it when teachers feel like, okay, this is outside my realm, they get referred? How does that work?
So I'm so lucky to be able to partner strongly with our special ed department, and really our special ed team is really what consists of our psychologists, our school psychologists. My team consists of social workers and behavior analysts. And so to answer your question in the way that I can tell you that our psychologists offer a lens through mental health as well as their in-depth experience and knowledge on supporting special education students. No, that's okay.
Excuse me, I have one more follow-up question here. So in this deeper dive analysis, well, it's two questions. First of all, can we get a deep dive presentation when we have that kind of sliced and diced a little more? And then secondly, will that include data down to like the school level so we can get some sense of what correlates with what? Because I'm suspecting that, while that number is a number, that it's really 30 numbers, right. A different one for every school, and maybe a different one for every grade, I don't know. And there's got to be some things that we could get out of that data that might be useful in terms of where that number of distracted kids is the lowest, what's being done differently there versus the places where it's the highest, and we can learn something.
Yes, absolutely. So I can tell you that we do have a breakdown of the schools that is shared with zone leaders as well as school leaders, and they take that individual information and unpack that and support their needs based upon the tailored feedback that they receive from their students and their workforce and their parents. This is just a general overview, and so I'd be more than happy to show you and talk to you a little bit more about that breakdown per school and per zone and what we're seeing and what we're doing about that. It's definitely a very exhaustive collective feedback that we get, but that's certainly a realistic thing that we can certainly do to support that.
Mr. Graham, if I may just turn my iPad. So we use a platform called Alchemer, which is a survey tool that allows us to slice and dice in all kinds of great ways. We do hundreds of surveys every year. This is the survey that Mr. White has summarized. Remember, this is a 10-minute agenda item, so we don't go into a lot of detail. But what you can see on my screen without seeing the detail, don't worry about trying to read. But what I did is I just picked out the schools in the Falcon Zone, because you're referring to flexible seating as a principle of Empower FZ. And the schools, the elementary schools in the Falcon Zone are mixed. Several of them are quite a bit higher than the district average in terms of the numbers of students that say, yes, my classroom is a place where I can focus. A couple of them are a little bit lower. That's the level of analysis that we can do. Now, I happen to know that there are a couple of elementary schools that are much more further along. They had early adopters with Empower FC, and those happen to be the two tallest bars here. Those numbers of students are 59% that say, yes, my classroom is a place where I can focus. At one school, at the other school, 68%. So the data, as we've gathered it, directly supports the idea that greater implementation of flexible seating specifically is correlated with. We don't have enough data to say that it's a cause and effect, but
So
it's correlated.
So I'm going to interrupt because I got questions, but what I'm going to say is that I'm going to ask you, yes or no, is that data available to all board members? And well, that's the second question. Is it available to all board members?
So let me explain that. We can make it available to all board members. We could not make it available to the public in this form. And it really genuinely depends on how much does the board want us to work to scrub? Because of the way our survey instrument is working, we're not trying to protect any of the personally identifiable information. So we'd have to go through and do a pretty hard scrub so that none of the responses could be identifiable. But at the building level, zone leaders and principals have access to this already.
At the appropriate levels, there's access. So as part of the education transparency initiative we're working on, these reports, we can ask for more detail, less detail, and make the reports available to the public. Something to consider. We can go on all night on this particular subject. I'm going to ask a couple of quick questions that I want a written answer. As far as safety goes, 14% do not feel safe. I'd like to get more details. I'll ask for a meeting to sit down with you. 57% of the classroom feel like they can concentrate. We've already addressed that. As far as harm goes, when I look at that scale and I see 6, 7, 8, 9, I see 10% in the 10, right? Which they're admitting to, they consider self-harm. But 6, 7, 8, and 9 is another 10% or more. So it really, kids who are considering self-harm is more than 10%. That's something that we need to consider, and that's part of the initiative and the action plan that the administration and district are working on. If you have any more questions, please email them to Mr. Hiltz. He'll get them to Mr. White, and we can always ask for more detailed presentation. Okay?
Just a quick question. Do we do drug education right now? Like sex ed, show kids what pills look like, what effects, they could have?
Yes, we do. We train our students according to the health curriculums that on drugs and alcohol and the risks associated. And we also train appropriate staff, specifically our administrators, our deans that are dealing predominantly with secondary students on how to identify those things and not only what they look like, but the signs and symptoms and different things like that. And so there is a very intentional effort there. And that goes into another presentation at another time, but we have a very in-depth, very strong, robust violence risk and suicide risk assessment that takes into account identifying those things. And so through those processes, we're able to educate staff and students.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to remind the board that review of the material and written questions help move this along a little bit quicker.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. School Health Improvement Plan, Wellness Update.
Good evening, Board of Education members. My name is Charlene Stegman, and I'm the Health and Wellness Specialist for District 49. Thank you for inviting me tonight. And in our time together, I hope to be able to provide you with a brief overview of the wellness program, district updates, and highlight the work done at several schools through their school health improvement plans, also referred to as SHIPs. You should have a copy for your reference of each school's SHIP in your packet. So I believe that wellness is a journey where we begin, improve, and develop into a better version. For tonight, I invite you to learn a bit more about the journey of the D49 Wellness Program, its beginning, its progression, and where we are now. D49's wellness journey began in 2006 with the Board of Education adopting the first wellness policy, recognizing the positive correlation with optimal health, learning, and academic success. This policy was put into place in response to federal law requiring all school districts receiving federal funding for child nutrition programs to adopt a policy on school wellness. D49 also established and continues to maintain the district-wide Wellness Advisory Council, or DWAC, to monitor, evaluate, and recommend revisions to the wellness policy and district wellness efforts. As the years progressed, you can see that so did the wellness program. There was collaboration between other districts in the Colorado Springs area, implementation of the coordinated school health model through all district-operated schools, and the creation of the health and wellness position, which I'm thankful for. In 2014, D49 revised the wellness policy to recognize the whole school, whole community, whole child model as the best practice for addressing health in schools, and we have continued to use this model through the years. The WISC model consists of 10 components, as you can see here. Schools develop their school health improvement plans around one of these 10 components based on needs at their school. Additionally, the WISC model emphasizes the role the community and families play in supporting the school, the connections between health and academic achievement, and the importance of evidence-based school policies and practices. This whole child approach to wellness will continue to help students be healthy, safe, engaged, challenged, and supported in their education. Through the years, D49 Wellness has been supported by a variety of grants, which support both staff and student wellness at the district and at school levels. This year, the CDE Student Wellness Grant received a no-cost extension, and which provided district-wide support for student wellness initiatives. Schools were given the opportunity to apply for a $500 mini allocation with 8 awards available. And I was happy to be able to award all 9 schools which applied, as some requests came in under budget or items that were requested were already available. The Healthy Kids Colorado no-cost extension grant supported nutrition and physical activity initiatives at Horizon Middle School and Evans Elementary. Through this funding, Horizon was able to offer staff nutrition education and after-school weightlifting and cooking clubs for students. Evans offered students an after-school rugby and soccer clubs, as well as Zumba classes for staff, and partnered with Cooking Matters to offer a 6-week cooking class for families. Kaiser Permanente supported donations for D49 Wellness this year, and that donation is supporting staff professional development in May, as well as monthly wellness challenges for all D49 and charter school employees. Monthly challenges have encouraged staff to focus on physical, mental, social, nutritional, and behavior changes to improve their health and wellness. Our current challenge is called Feel Like a Million, and it aims to increase energy and boost vitality, and currently we have 357 participants. We also received the CDE Staff Wellness Mini Grant in December. This grant supports group fitness classes held from February to early May, 3 times a week at Stetson, Evans, and Woodman Hills Elementaries. And I wanted to express my appreciation to each school's administration who made their locations available, as well as the school site facilitators who were available each week, set an example through participating, and consistently encouraged others to join. Wellness is also supported through our medical benefits provider, UMR. UMR Wellness Funds support staff wellness at district-operated schools and D49 employees. These funds support the annual Walktober Battle of the Districts Challenge, which is our most popular challenge every year. D49 competes against other local Colorado school districts for top prize. Unfortunately, we weren't victorious in winning this year, but we did have a record high participation rate with 700 participants. In May of 2021, the District-wide Wellness Advisory Council decided to allocate a portion of the UMR funds to district-operated schools to support staff wellness programs at the building level. This fall, all district-operated schools were eligible to receive a $500 funds for staff wellness. We had 16 schools choose to support staff through Zen Dens, staff building activities, and incentives for challenges. We also supported central office staff and Creekside buildings through purchasing picnic tables. Since not all schools requested the $500, the remaining funds were used to provide all D49 employees unlimited classes for no cost at Hot on Yoga from January through May. This decision was based on results from a staff survey and was supported by DWAC members. I have received positive feedback from staff expressing gratitude for providing this opportunity at no cost to them. As previously mentioned, each school selects one of the 10 components within the WISC model to focus on and develop their school health improvement plan objectives. Due to time, I will only highlight one school per zone, but would direct you to review the SHIPs for each school in your packet. Additionally, wellness success stories are currently being posted on each school's website. In the Falcon Zone, Woodman Hills Elementary's SHIP goal was to build positive relationships through safe and caring learning environments. One way students build these positive relationships is in the utilization of the outdoor classroom. In order to increase the usage of the outdoor classroom, students and teachers needed some shade. Woodman Hills applied for the CDE Student Wellness Mini Allocation and was able to purchase sunshade equipment for the outdoor classroom area. As a side note, the CDE Student Wellness Grant does not support capital improvement, making the traditional post in the ground, which is an example that you can see here, unapprovable. But Woodman Hills got creative and purchased large planters that the posts will be cemented into, making them portable should the school ever change locations. An example, again, is in the picture, but it's in the picture. In the Sand Creek Zone, Sand Creek High School's SHIP goal was to grow their after-school yoga and Pilates program, which is open to staff as well as students. This class is offered weekly and is financially supported through the UMR Staff Wellness Funds. They are continuing to look at ways in which to build their wellness program, involvement in these classes, and the other wellness challenges. Within the Power Zone, Skyview Middle School determined their SHIP goal was for students to have access to sensory tools when they feel overwhelmed or need to calm down. This was supported through the CDE Student Wellness Grant. Sensory tools include a variety of fidgets, poppets, and stress balls available in counseling offices and classrooms for easy access to students. Through the utilization of these tools, staff expect to see a positive correlation between usage and behavior among students. The iConnect Zone Goals Academy SHIP was, within the iConnect Zone, Goal Academy's SHIP goal was to provide a stress management toolkit for students at all goal locations. The toolkit contains stress management objects such as notebooks, fidgets, and stress balls for students to use for breaks when visiting their goal site. This initiative was funded through Goal Academy resources. On a district level, we support students and staff through partnerships with the American Heart Association and their Kids Heart Challenge and Go Red campaigns. This year, we had 9 schools participate in the Kids Heart Challenge, with 4 of those schools setting new school records. We offer staff weight loss support through Real Appeal and mental health support through our employee assistance program through Health Advocate. We continually seek ways to engage staff in their wellness journey through offering challenges like Walktober and Feel Like a Million. We also provide information about free offerings through companies like Headspace and discounts available for local fitness companies. More information about these programs can be found on the D49 website under Wellness. Thank you for your support for D49 Wellness, and I appreciate your attention and your time in understanding D49's wellness journey. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
You have a sensory kit for the board?
Jamie Lynn?
Yeah, I have a specific question when
Okay.
it comes to the grant pages. So the grant update, looks like here that we had the Healthy Kids Colorado grant. I know that there has been some controversy about the Healthy Kids survey that was sent out, and we were assured that that was not a requirement for the district, but the district has had it used. And so I want to see what is our connection with this grant. Like, what do we have to do when we receive that money?
So it is my understanding, so I came on board in July. That grant had already been 2 years in the making, maybe even to 3 years. And the requirement for that particular grant was the status of free and reduced lunch for students. To my belief, it does not correlate between that Healthy Kids Colorado survey and that grant. So there wasn't any connection in that. And that is why it was only open to Horizon and Evans, because they met the level of free and reduced at the time. Does that answer your question?
Just Evans, not Remington?
Right. Horizon Middle School and Evans Elementary. Yeah.
And my understanding, Mr. Hiltz, is that we don't automatically send all those surveys, right? Because there've been some
We don't automatically, and multiple principals who have found value in that survey in other years chose not to send it out this year, partly because of just general sensitivity, and partly because over time the question set, questions that would have been either mild or not controversial 3 or 4 years ago now use language that has become controversial. And so our principals, I think, judging the environment in which they're leading, made the decision that there wasn't enough to gain from the survey to justify completing the survey. It's also true that we put our cultural and climate survey on pause during the pandemic, and so they had to evaluate the fact that we were bringing that survey back online. It's mildly related. Mr. White tonight presented you about a quarter of the questions, maybe even a fifth of the questions. There's a lot more depth in that survey. So the principals knew that they would be getting more depth about culture and climate, which does imply the WISC model and the school wellness implicates it, excuse me.
I was really delighted to see, too, that you've got professional development staff wellness challenges where you incorporate the staff. And I was also encouraged, it says here, supported nutritional and physical activity initiatives at Horizon and Evans. Do you know what part of the nutritional activities that they were doing with that? It's okay if you don't, I was just curious.
No, that's okay. So initially, prior to the pandemic, when they first began the grant, they provided, both Evans and Horizon partnered together with Cooking Matters, which, if you're not familiar with that, is through Care and Share. And they provide cooking classes for families. I believe about 15 people are invited to come to that, but they cook with kids and parents together. It's a really fun opportunity for families to be able to do that. And I know that there was a wait list for that program at the time. They also did cooking classes after school for students, and that was highly received. I believe it was just a teacher at the school that did that. And then they did this year, they continued with the cooking club, but they also did a food education or nutritional education program for staff with some remaining funds that they had, which really lifted staff morale too. Not only gave them some education, but lifted that staff morale. And so that's what they specifically did for nutritional, that I can remember, for nutritional stuff for Horizon, at Horizon.
You mentioned, I might have misheard you, some schools actually didn't claim their $500. That's
Correct.
interesting.
That's correct. Yeah, we had 16 schools do that. There's probably a myriad of reasons that didn't happen. I believe that we are going to continue that. The DWAC committee decided to continue with that program. And so I believe that we will see an increase in that. Just as familiarity comes with it, people were able to really see where the schools that did use it, what they did with it, and some examples of what they could do for their staff, and really saw what they could do and the potential for that. It also could just be the year, just an overwhelming, we can't do one more thing, we're sorry, but we're going to do the best we can with what we've got. Yeah.
What is Zenden?
It's the fancy term for just a room, like a quiet area for staff. Some schools have it for staff and for students, or it's just staff and or just students. Just an area where staff can go away from students. That's not necessarily like the kitchen or the workroom, but that's a dedicated space that usually has a nice chair. It has some nice music. It has maybe some adult coloring pages, some natural scenery, just the ability to just redo. Yeah. So it's been really effective in the schools that have been able to implement that. Not all schools have the area, but a lot of the schools were able to find areas and convert them. So that was really nice.
Thank you so much. I'm going to move along. If you have any further questions, please send them to the chief officers. And now we're on nutrition services fees.
Good evening. I'm Monica Dines Henderson, Director of Nutrition Services. And as I'm sure you're all aware, you've seen the news, that Congress did not include the extension of the meal waivers that we've been operating on for 2 years. So now we have to go back to what was normal operations. With that, it means we have to reinstate meal charging prices, and with that means we have to increase our meal prices from what they were 2 years ago to stay in compliance with what is called paid lunch equity. What that means, in short, is the government wants to make sure that our families who have economic means are paying the true cost of the meal, and that meal is not being offset by the federal reimbursement from the free and reduced meals. So that's why these numbers are set the way they are. Unfortunately, USDA's timing for releasing this upcoming school year's reimbursement rates never correlates with when we come to the board. They usually release it in the middle of August. That's a little too late to let our families know how much they're going to pay for lunch. So this is with the best information I had off of the current NSL, so the National School Lunch Program meal rates that are being given this year, with the CPI increase in the 2%. And in the supporting documents, I gave you the information on how USDA calculates reimbursement rate. So with that said, at the end of the day, to keep the district in compliance, we do need to implement these meal price charges. Any questions?
Just for the board before you start, nutrition services is one of the most highly regulated areas in public education. So, these rates are basically what we have to do, unfortunately. And we're talking, I don't really know what the increase is from now, but is it considerable? Because I'm not sure what we're charging right now.
Yeah, I thought I had on here the
It's
current charges.
I'm looking at the cover sheet, which has some prices.
Yeah. So we have the current, actually I put down the current federal. Right now, we're not charging, we haven't charged for 2 years. So what we were charging before was like $1.65 for elementary breakfast and $3.65 for secondary lunch. So they are a substantial increase, but they
Almost a
have
dollar
to be
increase.
higher than the federal reimbursement rate to meet PLE.
And you guys cover your own costs.
Mm-hmm.
They pay their employees out of this and everything.
Yeah. We are self-funded, and with that, what it means is that we have to generate the revenue to pay for every expense that is incurred in nutrition services, to include equipment repair, equipment replacement, escalating food costs, dishwasher soap, salaries, benefits. It all is incurred by nutrition services.
Any further questions?
The question I have is, it says right here on one of the graphs where you're showing the pricing, that it's going to be, that you're estimating a 2% rate increase plus the consumer price index. This might be a better question for Brett. will that be sufficient with the current increases? Because I see you're required to cover the cost of the food. I mean, that's not negotiable, and the staff, and like you said, the equipment upgrade, but I'm just wondering if that 2% buffer will be sufficient.
I don't believe these are variables that we control.
No, those are
Right.
set by
Those are set for
the
us.
government.
This is all very formulaic. There's really, you're approving what the formula says is the result. There's really not a lot of opportunity to say, let's change that, let's change this. It's all just completely formulaic.
By the federal government. Yep. Do we have, go ahead.
So do we still have the program for those who can't afford food?
Free and reduced meals, yes. The state of Colorado covers the copay for the reduced kids for both breakfast and lunch, and the free students have no copay whatsoever.
Okay, so they're still covered? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
And when this price adjustment is placed out there, we will also encourage families to apply for the free and reduced program. And we're going to emphasize that quite a bit this year because of both of this rate increase and individuals' financial qualification for it may have changed in the 2 years since they last may have had to apply for it. In other words, 2 years ago, maybe they didn't qualify, that they will qualify for now because of the changing economic conditions that we're dealing with across society. So we need to push that message about registering, and we want to speak about that loud and clear to our families at every step of the way. Please apply for the free and reduced lunch program.
And that notification happens at the school level.
I will work with Dave and his team, and we'll send it out district-wide, and then we will also send it out at the school level too. All the schools include information in their back-to-school packets, so we really, really try hard to touch these families multiple times. We don't want them to be shocked in August when all of a sudden meals aren't at no cost anymore.
Let's go ahead and move this.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so my question is, with us providing breakfast, do students need to come early to school in order to receive that breakfast? And, or is that embedded in the school day, or how does that work?
All of our schools, except for one, have a breakfast program, and that breakfast starts before the academic day. So the kids go down to the cafeteria.
Okay, and then my next question is with the breakfast programs, I think it's important to keep in mind that that's time that's taken away from the family to have another meal. Like, they're only eating dinner with their family, and I think that's extremely important for us to keep in mind. And then if someone comes to school who's personally like hungry, needs food, we would feed them. But I don't know if that's something that we have to do a breakfast program. Is that required by the state to do a breakfast program?
It is not, and it's not required by the federal government, but it is in best practice for our families. A lot of kids in our community, even ones that you don't think would be using it, do, just because of their own time constraints in the morning.
I don't think we have, we provide breakfast for certain people, for people who come. So if they're missing breakfast with their family, that's a family choice, because they're bringing their kids to the school early to get the breakfast. So we're just providing a choice to help kids have something in the stomach to concentrate on the academic day. Okay, let's consensus to move forward. Consensus to move forward?
Yes.
Jamie Lynn?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes. Charity, yes. Yes.
Okay, we'll move that forward.
Thank you.
We're on to transportation fees, Jack.
Hey, good evening, board members. I'm Jack Petrello, Director of Transportation. I'm here to talk about our transportation fees tonight. Quickly over the agenda, I'm going to go over the current fees. I'm going to go over proposed fees for upcoming years. I'm going to show you the fee change from the difference, basically the difference in fees from this year to the proposed. And I'm going to cover a few reasons why we need these increases in our fees. And then I'm going to present a recommendation. So currently, this is our fee structure, and it's $200 for an annual bus pass for a student. And our family cap is at $600, which covers up to 3 students. If you have 4 or 5 students, those families hit the cap and don't have to pay for those additional students. Our quarterly fee is $75 per student, and we offer a punch card for students that don't need to ride all the time, and that's at $25. So our projected fee revenue for the end of this year, we're projecting we're going to hit right around $325,000 of revenue from our fees at the end of this year. And our projected budget is $1.7 million we're projecting that is what our expenses are going to be. And this is only for general education busing. It's not all of our busing. This is only our general education busing. This next slide shows what a 50% increase in proposed fees looks like and what a 100% increase looks like. The annual student annual fee would be $300, and a family cap would be $900 at 50% increase, and the quarterly would be $100. And you can see at the 100% increase, it's a $400 per student for an annual fee. The family cap goes up to $1,200 for 3 students and more, and then $150 for quarterly ridership. And what we did was we used the same exact ridership numbers that we are currently experiencing right now. So, and projected the fee revenue off of those numbers for next year. And so at 50%, the fee revenue is almost $490,000 estimated. And at the 50% increase, and at 100%, you can see it's almost $650,000 revenue. The big key to take away from this slide is our budget that we are projecting for next year. And you can see that it's gone up to over $2 million. And this is just for general education busing. So this just shows the difference between the current fee and the increase at 50% and 100% of how much the increase will be for these 2 percentage increases. 50% is obviously 100 for an annual, 300 more increase for a family cap, and 25 increase for a quarterly fee. And at the 100% rate, it's a $200 increase in the annual fee, and a $600 increase for a family cap, and $75 for a quarterly. I've been talking about our increased expenses for, a little over a year now at all of my board updates for you guys. And our two, let me just start with our first one here is fuel and fluids. Our fuel expenses and fluids expenses has more than doubled in the last 10 months. And this is the reason we need to increase our fees. It is our second biggest budget item in our budget, in our transportation budget, is fuel and fluids. Our first expense in our transportation budget is our salaries. And I know Brett and the VCT team have been working very well with that and increasing our salaries for our staff and drivers over the last 4 years. So that's our biggest expense as our budgetary expense. And then the last thing is our parts and our outside service, our service vendors. All of their prices have been increasing too, and their services that they charge us outside of what we do internally. And we're predicting that those increases are going to continue because there's supply chain issues that are still occurring today. So this is the recommendation from the administration. We're recommending to increase our fees by 50% to help cover our costs. It'll move our student annual fees to $300 a year, a family cap of $900, a student quarterly fee of $100, and we're going to increase the punch card fee to $35. And our replacement cards have not gone up, so we're keeping the replacement cards at the same price as we get to purchase them for. You have any questions?
I do. So you say, so there's pros and there's cons to this. Relevant data and expected outcomes. By increasing the fees, we should increase our revenue for transportation, which will decrease the expense of transportation to the general fund. Doing this puts more of the per pupil funding back into classrooms. But you also say the risk of increasing fees could result in less student participation in transportation, which could also lead to less student participation in going to school, in my opinion. Any other mode of transportation, your words, to and from school is at least 50 times less safe than riding on a school bus. So now we're asking parents, pay more to keep your kids safer. That's my position on this. We're one of 7 school districts in Colorado, to my knowledge, that charge fee-for-services for buses. Okay? So keep that there are pros and cons to this, and when we just passed that transportation building, we had students say, a lot of my friends take the bus. Can these families afford this? Well, free and reduced lunch basically makes people eligible not to pay the fees. So there's another thing to that. Okay, so how many people who receive free and reduced lunch ride the bus compared to people who will pay? And so there's the word equity issue in that regards as well. Different kind of equity though. Okay, so something for the board to consider. Everyone has a different position on this, I'm sure. You want to speak to anything I just said?
Yep. Our free and reduced number right now is about 35 to 40% of our ridership is free and reduced. And I generally give you that information on my updates, as ridership information.
And that may be affected more, just as we learned from Monica, to go to, as people start paying for lunches, maybe more people qualify, as Pedro said. So again, you take in people ride the bus, these people are paying. Okay, no, Brett, you're not allowed to speak up. You guys want to ask questions?
What do the kids pay if they're on free reduced lunch? What do they pay for the bus?
Nothing.
Oh, nothing.
Nothing. It's free. If they qualify for free and reduced, busing is free.
Keep in mind that as we talk about that basically means that the district is subsidizing that ridership, because free and reduced lunch for nutrition services is a totally different world. If a student qualifies for free and reduced lunch for nutrition services, the federal government reimburses us for that meal. For transportation, that is a district decision that we make to allow free and reduced students to not pay those fees.
And that also applies to sports and other things, student
And
participation.
we do that in a number of areas across the
that
district,
have cost.
which you'll see in the next presentation as we talk about student fees.
I think that we as a board need to think strategically in terms of where we want to be with this. And we should have a plan as to how much of the transportation budget we are going to ask to overall be reimbursed by fee versus how much we're willing to subsidize out of the general education fund. My personal opinion is that this is something that we should be more aggressively pursuing increases over the years to get that number to be about half of the transportation budget. At the moment, Jack's proposal, which is a very good proposal and well thought out, is about 25% of it. And so I think that we need to consider the fact that if we go with this proposal, in my personal opinion, this should be one step of several, and we should be starting to ratchet this thing up so that we're not supplementing as much of the transportation budget with the general fund. It will not affect our poorest students, because our poorest students, as you just pointed out, are not having to pay anyway. And what it will do is it will give a more accurate economic value to what we're providing for parents it is expensive for these people to drive their kids to school. I mean, we did it, I get it. Bus service is a great thing, and it will make it easier for our transportation department, again, in my opinion, to provide a top quality service if we are charging charging closer to the real economic value of what we're doing.
So I'm going to be the devil's advocate, so to speak, on this one. If you have reduced people riding the bus, isn't that more traffic at the schools?
That's correct.
Is this going to increase bus routes, number of drivers, number of buses that we need, or is it going to decrease it?
It's going to remain the same right now. We would like to add, that's a totally different topic. That's a driver shortage.
So if we're going to get to 50% of the cost, which is close to about somewhere between $800,000 and $900,000, which is double the fee right now, you're talking charging $600 for a student and possibly $1,800 family cap for 3 students. Some even have 4. I equate this, and I'm going to use kind of a little bit of politics here, so don't get too offended. You got the people that can afford to pay taxes, and they drive the kids to school. You got the people that don't get to pay taxes or can't pay taxes, so they don't get to pay taxes. So it affects the people in the middle, right? That's the middle class. And in this scenario, they're the ones that get stuck with the bill. Okay, so what the board really has to decide is it more beneficial for the district as a whole, or is it less beneficial to our constituents, families? That's how I look at it. Okay, it's a choice of one or the other. Someone's gonna have to pay, and those people are, if I had to pay more than what I did when I was sending 5 kids to school, and 3 I paid for and 2 someone else paid for from the same household, we were paying a lot of money. Okay, so we just started taking kids to school. So it's something to consider. A lot of different ways to look at this. Jamie Lynn?
Well, you brought up a very good point, because those families who are caught in the middle of the middle bracket are not only paying for their children to be riding the bus, they're paying for other people's children to also ride that bus. So they're footing twice the bill, basically. And those are the people that were hurting the most. And I think, and people are paying taxes. I mean, we have bills. If you look at our bill for our taxes that go to the schools, people have to wonder, hey, where's our money going? Really, where's our money going?
Certainly a philosophical dilemma, choice, situation. So, Brett?
Thanks. I just want to clarify one comment you just made there. Yes, the students that are participating are paying. They're not paying 2x though, for meaning paying for the students that are participating with free and reduced. They're paying the same as every other student across the district.
Right, but we have to increase our prices to subsidize that. And if we had the free and reduced.
I'm sorry, we're not increasing the prices for the subsidy. We're only increasing the prices for it to the point earlier. I think we're trying to get to more of a 1/3 type of target, right, Jack?
That's correct. And we actually hit that back in 1819, Brett.
We did back in 1819, and then we haven't increased prices since.
Right, that's correct.
And that's the biggest issue, is that we're 4 years behind. And this is a 4-year-old rate, right? So we had the 1/3 target we'd accomplished 4 years ago. And because we've stayed flat since then, now we've fallen way behind. It would take the 100% increase, would still not even get us to 1/3, right? And so it's a hard topic. I know that for sure. I understand. Transportation is not something we're required to do, right? It's a tradition. It's an entitlement, but it's not something we're required to do, and that's why we don't get any funding for it. We get a partial funding, so if we do 1/3 funding from the state and 1/3 funding from fees and 1/3 funding from the free and reduced, that's kind of the target we've been operating towards. The very fact that we have fees also helps us contain the expense side. If we went unfeed, our expense side would go up more, assuming we could hire drivers, but it would go up quite a bit. So there's no easy answer. I know that. There's no easy answer to this. But that's what you need to have all the information to say what is the best of bad answers with this particular question.
Have we gotten stakeholder input yet? The answer is no? No? Okay.
Well, I don't think they'll be
Expect
too happy
once this
with-
topic hits
yeah.
the mainstream, we'll get stakeholder input.
I expect we'll hear quite a bit, but I can tell you, as someone who drives quite a bit myself, my fuel costs have doubled. And so that's just a reality right now with gas prices. My expenses have gone up to go to and fro.
So then I have a question with what you said, Brett. With the school districts that don't charge for fees, they're not receiving money for their transportation?
All districts have the opportunity to submit their reports at the end of a fiscal year to set up their reimbursement that they get, or a subsidy that they get from the state. And so I assume every district does that, but it is a subsidy, so it covers about a third of the cost for the program. So every district that is not charging fees is just bearing the other 2/3 completely in their general fund. We're trying to bear basically a third in our general fund.
Okay, I'm sorry, I must have misunderstood. We get a subsidy from the state that covers about a third of these costs as well?
That's correct.
Okay. So when we say projected to be 2 million, the government is subsidizing 1/3 of that 2 million. The state government, okay?
Yep.
My suggestion is, there's a lot to consider here. There's probably more questions to consider. Whether we vote yay or nay, though, we should have a vote to put it officially on the record. So I recommend moving this forward for a vote in the May regular session. And by then, hopefully, you'll have all your questions answered so we can actually give a more educated, and talk to your constituents too. And so I recommend moving this forward. Voice,
Yes.
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 okay, we'll move it forward for a vote at the next meeting. Prepare for more questions. We'll give them to Pedro to go to you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Student grade level participation costs, fees.
Good evening, Board. Ron Sprins, Director of Finance. Bring for you tonight our fee digest, we call it. A number of years ago, the district tasked the finance department to really get a feeling and get a hold of the expenses that families were incurring with our athletic fees, our club fees and stuff like that. So we put together this fee digest to help answer a lot of those questions. And so I have a lot of information out here. I'm just going to open up a summary page. And again, this is kind of what we were talking about. This first slide I'm showing you here. Why do we charge fees? Again, we're trying to maximize the per pupil revenue, the relative share of per pupil revenue for every student. So that's why we do these fees. Number 2 there is specifically looking at transportation. So I have 1 and 3 for the student fees, but that second line item there is directly talking about transportation. Any questions about this?
This is very important. We need to make sure that we have this. This is the philosophy, right? This is what we're doing, why we're doing it. So we have to be very clear and have this. And if we want to change it, this is where we would implement change. But this is the why. that we're doing. And number two, since we just talked about transportation, the utilization of service, right? Only about 30% of our students are utilizing transportation. So that's what you have to remember, is the 70% that are not. And this is the same thing when it comes through each of these fees that we're talking about. There's very small percentages of the overall student population that are using many of these things. And so our intent is to say, let's to offer them, but to not create a burden on the students that are not utilizing those things as a result.
So how do we do this 100 years ago when we were in school? I mean, sort of, you know, PPR's gone up, but everything has been proportional. How is it that the schools in the old days afford to put kids through school without any of the fees? I don't remember paying any fees, not even for sports. And why is it that we're needing to charge when we have had proportional increases in PPR? Just maybe a dumb question, but.
Again, I'm gonna go back to this page here. We're not trying to charge those individuals who are not participating. Let's say my child's in football and your child is not. If we didn't have fees, your child would pay for my child to play football. This is those people that there are some classroom fees that all pay, but there are sport fees in here where just the activity members pay.
So
Okay.
if I could address your question a little bit, Ivy, when I went to school, which was not 100 years ago, unfortunately, I'm not really younger than you though either, so I'm not sure how you did that 100-year thing, but we had fees and they were just a lot lower. And you know, every time I look at numbers now and I see how big they get, I just try to remember that I did pay 10 cents a gallon at one point for gasoline. It was a long time ago.
Yes, it was.
I would also say that I don't think things have changed proportionally, right? There are national competitions and things that were not around. And so things have really gotten bigger. They've been grossed up on that size. If you watch the Disney Channel, right, you see the cheer competitions and stuff. Not to get, I probably shouldn't throw out the Disney Channel.
I could just go
Anyway,
back. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Anyway, there's a lot more that's being pursued these days than that was being pursued in those days. And this is all basically demand-based. A program does not exist if people don't want to do it. And a program is not, the fees for a program are very specifically quantified for the cost of that program. There's no other extra being added to it. It is the real cost of the program. And basically the participants are saying, here's what we want to do with this program. If you want to take a cheerleading team to nationals, there's big dollars with that, right? And again, we don't want students who are not following that path to be able to remove from their experience to make that happen.
I just find it interesting that if you want to be on student government, you have to pay a fee now. Like, to be a student leader, to lead in your school, you have to pay a fee to do that? Like, I've never heard of such a thing.
Well, we could always ask what's involved with, what does that fee pay for? I mean, it's a little into the weeds, a little bit more into the weeds than the board gets, but, you know, as an example.
One of the things that helps fund is that's an extra duty for a staff member. And so any of these things, so when board members, I'm sorry, was there a question?
I said, then why don't we just do away with student government if it's such a burden to everybody? I just don't understand why we're charging fees for every little tiny thing.
Because as this board has repeatedly emphasized, if we have limited resources and unlimited demand, if we don't charge for things like student government or activities or create funds or revenue that we can use for coaches' salaries and advisor salaries, then we will take those costs out of compensation. And this board's been pretty emphatic that we should not do that. So we have families, it's manifest evident that we have families that choose to pay those fees because they have the means and because they value those things in addition to academic experiences. Many of us were parents and paid for our children to go to athletic camps and to go to science camps and to do all kinds of things. And we're blessed that we had the opportunity to do that. If we discontinued doing that, we would lose parents, we would not serve our community. So I hope the suggestion of just canceling it because we have to charge for it is a facetious question or suggestion. But the reason we charge is because those activities cost us money. We have to recoup that money from the people that get the benefit, or we have to subsidize it out of the general budget.
And I believe it's only fair if teachers are doing the extracurricular activities, whether it's coaching or whatever, that they do get paid for that. Okay. Any further questions? Can we move this forward?
Yes.
Can I'm going to talk about one thing real quick.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So we had a gentleman in our department that worked really hard on putting this digest together, and he has an amazing process that he goes to every single school. He talks to every athletic director for athletic fees or all of the principal for the different classroom fees, and they decide what they want to charge for that month. In the detail, you will see detail expenses for every charge that we put together, every single one. He did an amazing job. That gentleman left our district for greener pastures. So we're putting this together. He did a lot of work before he left, but we're putting this together. So what you'll see on these summary pages, I just want to tell you what you're going to be looking at. You'll see a current column, a current fee, that's this year's fee, and then you'll see a proposed fee. Anywhere you see a blue line, I tried to identify where there was a change. So you'll see for the 5th grade class, and this is at Falcon Elementary School of Technology, they have a current fee of $10, and they're requesting to go to $14. Again, being a board-approved fee allows for free and reduced reimbursement for those fees. If you look down this list and you do see a red line, that is a fee that we don't have updated yet. It needs to be tracked down. And so when I bring this back for a vote, I'll have a list of all those fees that we've tracked down. Questions?
Further questions? And does the board pay any of student fees?
Free and reduced reimbursement, yes.
Yeah, so if a student is on free and reduced lunch, the board, they pay nothing, but the board reimburses the school those fees from our budget.
Just for clarification, reduced is 50%, free is 100%.
There you go. Okay, so there's a slight difference. I just wanted to point that out. It came to mind.
That's a really good point. It's a really important point because you don't want schools that might have a higher population of free and reduced for their participation to suffer or their program to suffer. And so the school is made whole, the program is made whole from the Board of Education budget. But I appreciate that you're digging into this because this is important stuff. There's near 1,000 fees. Of course, that's because we're big. And we have 3 big high schools and 3 middle schools and you know, all
Big
the
high
elementary
schools, we
schools.
actually have more high schools.
But every single one of those fees has a detailed page in this package right here. And so, and what that's being spent for is projected in there.
And the free and reduced board reimbursement also applies to transportation?
Yes, it does.
Okay, that's something I didn't clarify before. Jamie Lynn, also, what I've been told is parents can join their kids at breakfast as well. It's 15 minutes before the academic day, and they can actually join. I heard parents have joined in that breakfast portion as well. They pay the adult portion. Okay, ready to move this forward? Or consensus to move forward?
Yes.
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 Yes, we'll move forward.
Thank you very much.
We're on to special education instructional coach.
Good evening, Board. Sue Holmes, Falcon Zone Leader, and I'm here to propose a new position at Falcon High School, Special Education Instructional Coach. So our special education department at Falcon High School has been receiving extra focus and support, and we continue to experience inexperienced teachers, training gaps, turnover, and the training that we've received, we've outsourced for it. We've involved zone level people as well as district, and we really need somebody on site to work with not just training our special education teachers and paras, but also our general education staff on how to best support our IEP students. So this is really ties right into many, many strategic objectives, not just special education, but student success, student outcomes, achievement. I think that definitely an improved culture, as well as I see a link to that this coach might also be involved in training with some of our responsive de-escalation trainings.
Okay. Not compliance, but instructional. For
Instructional, yeah.
Best teaching practices and stuff like that. Okay.
Correct, yeah.
And I do understand at Falcon, part of it was having, when we have new paras and new teachers and we require them to do training to get caught up into how we do business, they were doing that basically on free time and it was overloading them. An instructional coach might be help reduce after work hour type stuff, because they'll be doing the training and the professional development.
Right, and could be in there, in classrooms right there. And again, then giving feedback to teachers and paras on how they're working with kids. And also, one of the big things that Falcon High School wants to do is really do a good job with the co-teaching model. And this coach would be involved in really helping our special education staff and general education staff learn to do that well. So,
Right, and co-teaching, to my understanding, is special education teacher and general education teacher co-teaching a class together, because we have inclusive environment where there's students receiving special education services in the general education class.
Exactly.
Okay.
And Sue, my understanding is that is the model, not one of the models, but for next year in math and ELA, that's the model.
That is the model,
So
yes.
so every student with an IEP who is in one of those classes would be in a co-taught environment. And that requires training and support.
Yep. Any further questions?
Are you the only zone with a coach for special ed?
This is a new position for the district,
So
yes.
you're the first of the
First
kind.
one. Mhm.
And what, looking at all the criteria, or qualifications, what does this person have more than like just a regular special ed teacher?
It would be,
Leadership experience, maybe a team lead, expertise in best practices for special education instruction, a lead teacher, maybe could have served in other areas, might be an administrator or dean of students who really wants to get back to instructional coaching.
so the way I read it, it's bachelor's degree with special education generalist license, and then experience in teaching and experience in being a trainer. Okay. Do I have, do we have consent to move this forward for a vote?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. We're on to Coordinator of Career and Technical Education.
Good evening, Board, Chief Officers, Carrie. I'm here tonight to propose a reclassification for the leader of our Career and Technical Education program to coordinator. And As the cover sheet stated, career and technical education is very complicated. So I'm going to try to very, very quickly and briefly give you a synopsis of what career and technical education is in D49. So, career and technical education program includes both middle school and high school teachers. We have about 62 teachers that have a special and unique credential for the career pathway courses that they deliver to our students. And those career pathways could be, you've met some of them, like our ag teacher, Dave Krantz. So agriculture, athletic training, biomed, business, construction, culinary, graphic design, education, nursing, manufacturing, engineering, cybersecurity, and IT. Those are just a few. And we have 62 teachers and 6,800 students taking these classes. A total of about 51 specific programs across all of our middle schools and high schools. Those programs take a lot of work to get those approved through the state. We have to make sure the correct teacher is credentialed and is qualified, has the appropriate guidance and professional development and training to teach those courses. They also support student organizations like Future Farmers of America, FBLA, DECA, HOSA, Cyber Patriot. So those are student engagement organizations that are typically after school. These teachers also are required to interact and be a part of formal advisory meetings twice a year with industry partners. And in order to engage our students, we use work-based learning experiences like job shadows and internships to expose our students to industry partners as well, to get a better sense of what that career pathway may feel like, look like, and may be something that they'd like to explore after high school. These courses are not just elective courses. They are specifically sequenced career exploration and career preparation courses. They typically have 4 levels, culminating in internships, industry certifications, capstones, or even college courses. Along with the program approvals, the person in this position is responsible for 5 state reports to keep us compliant with the state. This is a highly regulated program, set of programs. One of the reports that we have to submit every year I wanted to mention to you is called the CDIP program, CDIP, Career Development Incentive Program. And that's when a student gets a industry accepted credential before they graduate from high school, and we file that through our reporting, we get an incentive back from the state between $600 and $1,000 per certification. And we make sure that money goes back into the program and to those hardworking teachers that have brought those students along and across the finish line. We also manage the Perkins federal grant money, and all of that aligns with a regional needs assessment with industry so that we are offering programs that then will develop pipelines of students into those top jobs in our region and in our state. We're also working closely with Pikes Peak Community College to offer as many articulated college credits for these high school classes. So if we have the correct alignment of the curriculum and scope and sequence, then the college will authorize that as articulated credit, and students can earn college credit along the way as well. We also help the teachers with those articulation requests, which can be rather lengthy. And then lastly, we are responsible for the replacement cycles of our technical labs, and we have about 50 computer labs or groups of technology carts that we have to keep up with. Mark Roscoe is very helpful with helping us maintain a gigantic spreadsheet to make sure that we are replacing those computers regularly enough to keep and sustain the workability and the functionability in the classrooms for students. Do you have any questions?
So has there been a change? And we're aware of the amazing programs that you do have. has there been a change or a drastic increase in the number of programs or students that require this extra position? Who has done the work in the past?
So in the past, we had a director and we had a program manager, and maybe 5 or 6 years ago, we also, I think, had a part-time person that was involved with some of the state reporting.
But, excuse me, may I respond? This isn't a new position, this is an upgraded position. We've had a CTE program manager, and we used to have 2 directors. Mary was the director of concurrent enrollment, and a woman named Nikki Lester was the last director of CTE. After Nikki left, we consolidated those 2 director positions and added a program manager. And what we've learned over time is that as these programs have grown, both in number of programs and number of participants, the reporting workload in particular has simply gotten bigger than we believe is manageable at the program manager level. And that's why we're asking to upgrade the position.
I think we're also seeing a shift since the pandemic where families are recognizing and realizing what student debt feels like. And CTE courses are a really great way for their students to explore career pathways that may or may not require a 4-year college degree, but may be really a good sustainable wage for a family.
So I guess my question was, so there's increasing attendance, enrollment in the programs. Okay. Being money-minded, I guess my question would be, does this require a full-time position, which is, another huge salary that adds to our budget? Or, in other words, have we considered other means, other ways of, and that applies to any new job, right? Yeah, any new position. But you're saying this already has been.
We already have a full-time person.
Okay.
Yeah.
So adding another position.
We're just reclassifying this position. We're upgrading this position.
So
It's
we're
more than a
upgrading the
one-person job.
position from a program manager to a coordinator. It is an administrative position. Are we still within our bands of number of administrators to students and costs to general fund or whatever we call it?
This might get us up to the floor of the band. We're actually below. We don't have enough administrators. If we refer back to the State of the Workforce report we did back in November, it showed that we did not have enough administrators to that band we established.
Thank you. If the board remembers, in a past meeting, I don't know exactly when, but we described how we keep track of our administrative costs and how we're less than other districts, both in the number of administrators and the cost to administrators, and we keep track of that. So what Brett's saying is we're below our band that we want to be in the middle of, and this will increase us to get to the floor. Okay, what I don't see on the cover page is the increase in costs. So that just has to be added to it before we can actually vote. We can move it forward right now, but we have to have the costs added to the cover page. It may be on the actual cover page, it just wasn't updated in board docs. So.
We can do that.
I apologize, but we calculated it, it's always personal, we calculated it in the $7,000 to $9,000 range.
Okay. So they're looking to $7,000 to $9,000, and that's including, we already do the benefits and stuff, so this is a salary increase. Okay, but add it for, if we move it forward for the next meeting, do I have consensus?
Yes.
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 Yes, so we'll move it forward with the stipulation that you're going to add the costs. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
I'm now on to district financials. Mr. Sprins.
Good evening, Ron Sprins, Director of Finance, with our quarterly report on the state of the district and the financials. This is a fairly large document with a lot of numbers, and I'm not going to go through every single one of those numbers. Yeah.
I seen this report when it was over 600 pages. Yeah.
Yeah, only 81 today. So,
Before
yeah.
you start, I just want to point out these first few pages, a very good description of the district. Okay?
Yeah, we try to make this a combination of, there's some people that like to read, and there's some people like Brett and I who like to look at the numbers and look at that stuff. So we try to put a little combination of both on here. So I'm just going to go over a couple pages in here. One of the things I wanted to talk about is how we are spending year to date. And so I've added these sheets in here. So it's a little bit of both. Some people are numbers people, so I have that on here, but I also have a graph on here to help people understand where we're at as a district. So if you just want to get a quick glimpse of where the district stands, this is a great page to look. This is our general fund only. But again, a great way to go in and to see where we're at spend-wise. I created this because a lot of the models we were using in the past would just assume that we're spending 1/12 of our budget every month. And for salaries, that's true. We pretty much hit that number. But for implementation spend or the non-personnel spend, we do see some variability in that. And so I wanted to show these graphs, and you can see that variability in there. So again, this is our entire budget, 126 million in the general fund. I break down the numbers into a number of different buckets. If you want to see how much we pay teachers, how much benefits we have on paras, how much we have budgeted for utilities, all those numbers are there. But again, if you just want a quick visual, then the graphs down at the bottom should help you. So this first one here is our personnel spend. If you focus really hard, you can see a little blue line that goes up the graph there. We call that our window of precise performance. So that is the target that we're trying to hit. It's a very small target. It's anywhere from 98% spent up to 101% spent. 98.5 to 101. So it's a very tough target to hit. And you can see that's where we're sitting right now, personnel-wise. Depending on where they're at in that budget, I try to give it a little score here. So you can see the district right now is 10 because we're right in the middle of that band, which is great. The next one is our implementation spend. And so again, this just is this helps me sleep at night. This helps my pillow be a little softer when I can see this and say, okay, we're doing all right as a district. We're a little underspent. And again, it's not good, or you can see because the colors of the graph, this is what we would call a good miss. Okay, again, we want to spend this year's dollars on this year's kids, and there's different reasons why we're so low here. One of them is utilities. We had a very warm fall, and we had a fairly warm beginning to the winter, so we were seeing some savings there. And we're seeing, this is savings all over the district. But again, this is what we would call a good miss on the good side of the window of precise performance. Now, I do again score us a little low. That's why I've scored a 7 there, because we are so far away from that line. So I have these pages for the different zones. So I hid my stuff over here. Oh, here we go. So if you wanted to look at a particular zone, you could see how that particular zone was affecting the budget. And again, you can see here, this is what the Falcon zone looks. And you can see when I talk about variability and spend, you can see how that looks like. you know, we start off the year and we're doing, we spend up till November, and then that November to December, we have a real drop off in the spend just because we're getting towards the end of the first semester. But then when school ramps up after December, you see a jump in pay. Now, what this line is based on is three previous years of actual spend. So this is how the Falcon Zone spent their money over the last 3 years. Okay? Any questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm not sure if this is Brett or if this is you, but I'm seeing that personnel costs are actually running pretty tight to budget at this point. And at one point, we were running a significant shortfall in terms of being able to fill positions and being able to actually kind of get everybody in place. Are we starting to get caught up a little bit in terms of hiring? Yeah.
Well, we still have open positions, but we did use a lot of that catch-up, that money we saved. We used it in that supplemental payroll that we paid out last month. If you dig into this, you have to look real careful because the numbers are so big. You can see we're looking at close to $80 million here, but I'm going to try to get even tighter here on those last 2 months. So you can see the month before we were running a little under budget. When we hit that supplemental payroll, we jumped into that band. Good question. Any other questions? Yes.
Trying to think how to ask this.
Mhm.
Okay, so each zone has different PPR because of what you explained in the past, and
Mhm.
this is just part that just
So this
incorporated
is
in
the
it.
resulting the results of those calculations give us a zone budget, right? So let me go back. I'll pick a new zone, pick Sand Creek Zone. We'll pick on them a little bit. The resulting calculations from those normalization calculations, so the results of that PPR times their student count ended in a $25.3 million budget. Now there's a little more in there. There's a previous year rollover and stuff like that, but the base of that amount is from those normalizations. Okay. What other questions?
Okay, so if we get a school or a zone that's over budget, what is the corrective action?
Well, yeah, so this is a great tool for zone leaders and or principals. I share this information with all of them. I have these sheets for every department, every school in the district, and so I can share this information.
Is it a sheet or is it an online, they can bring this up online?
No, this is an Excel spreadsheet that I developed that I have to load with current information.
And this is the first time you're showing it to the board in our community, correct?
I've showed it in the past. This is the first time I've really had a detailed explanation of it.
You guys like this method?
And so if you do see, if there is a zone or school for that matter that's over budget, that appears to be over budget. Now, they're not over budget until we get to June and we're done with the school year, right? But they might blip over into the yellow and red area, and that's why I colored it there. Hey, you're getting close. You know, we need to make some decisions in the next few months here where we can flatten that line out and bring us back into budget. So this is what.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, you've actually been going into the school buildings to brief this to principals and their leadership teams and
Absolutely.
zone leaders.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I like to see.
Yeah.
I like to see our central office guys get into the buildings instead of the buildings get out of where they need to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I don't think this is something we're moving forward, so at this point, we say thank you so much. I really like this tool, and we'll move on to pay schedules. Save 9 seconds.
So Brett Ridgway, Chief Business Officer, I have 30 minutes on these next two items. I will endeavor to do them both in 20.
I don't
The first-
recall during agenda setting giving you 20 minutes for legislative update.
Yeah, I don't need 20 for legislative update, but I think I might need 15 for pay schedules, in all honesty, so. Okay.
Okay.
So pay schedules. This is an important milestone for us to hit and a conversation for us to have about compensation, especially since we have this strategic objective to improve compensation. You can't think about compensation. You've got to ground yourself with key context and key points of reference, right? Ron just got done talking about $126 million for the general fund budget for this year. Remember that $16 million of that general fund budget has strings attached to it, and those string processes require us to match another $13 million of it. So we end up with $97 million of no string revenue in the general fund, and that's of our total district budget and the operating portfolio of over $200 million. So of our budget, of our appropriation, of our cost, 45% of it has no strings attached, 55% of it has strings attached to it. Our staffing is allocated almost inverse. The 55% of our budget that has strings attached to it only absorbs 40% of our staffing. The 45% that does not have strings attached to it has to absorb 60% of our staff costs. This is some of the conflict that we basically see and feel is what can we do and what can we not do in terms of decision making. Also, we have to remember what is our relative position to our competition. Need to remember that we have a 14% deficiency compared to D20 and a 31% deficiency compared to D11. If you haven't already been hearing, you'll be hearing about what are their pay proposals for the future, or for next year, I should say. Another key point of context to remember is 81% of our spend goes to personnel and only 19% goes to implementation costs. So we are always by far focusing on the spend on people. And then the final point of reference I want to bring back to your mind is what is our increase in PPR? Right, we spent these previous meetings talking about rate increase and volume increase, and it's that rate increase, that PPR rate increase, that is again that key thing to take note of. That was 6.3%. So I always like to talk about cover sheets, right, as well. So I want to zoom in here on this one and see if I can navigate a Mac. Really would love for having a Windows machine up here someday. Okay, I want to bring you to this number right here in this table that says 6.4%, right? So we just talked about 6.3% was our PPR rate increase. We wanted to target something across the pay schedules that would get us somewhere close to that. So we're sitting here at a proposal in the aggregate, across all the groups, the segments, I should say, 6.4%. So we're really hitting on that number precisely. You can see the individual segments above and what the percentage change for that segment would be. 6% for teaching licensed staff, 8% for the ESP hourly staff, 6.3% for the professional technical staff. There's a small group, 7 people that are part-year professional technical. Think of those as some of our security team, for instance. They work the school year, but they're professional technical role. SSP is an area of focus this year, and so you see a bigger number here at 8.4%. If you recall last year, we increased transportation pay by 15%. That was the area of focus then. This is the area of focus now is the SSP staff, and these are folks that we are in competition with medical for a lot of these roles, right? This is healthcare oriented things, roles. And then the administration up 3.9%. Now, this is, again, what would be projected for the total cost increases. As I go into the package then that's provided in here, I want to spend a lot of time focusing on this page. This is a page that's in our budget package. It's been in our budget package for a while. And this shows you what we've done, how much progress we've made over the last 5 years. Compensation is not a new priority. Improving compensation, with all due respect, is not a new priority for us. We've been focusing on this forever, and we will continue to focus on this. And a key benchmark on how we can say how we're doing is what is the base pay change on each of these 5 main schedules that we've got. And so what you can see here is in the 2017-18 fiscal year, 5 years ago, teacher base pay was $33,500. Next year, the all-in base pay is being projected at $42,720. That's an increase of $9,000 over the course of this 5 years. 5% average annual growth. So we have been focusing on this for a while, and we've been able to be making strides on this because of what we did back in 2017-18, which was to redesign our pay schedules so that it would allow us to manage base pay more appropriately and a little bit more aggressively. Similarly, on the ESP, hourly paid folks, what the numbers that I show here are actually somewhat theoretical. It's basically what is the D49 minimum wage, if you will, annualized to a full 2080 hour full-time schedule. There isn't a role like that technically exists, but this provides us a way, again, that we can provide good comparison relative to each other and keep things consistent over time. So 5 years ago, we were at a $21,000 annual, and now we're going to be going to a $30,000 annual number right here. So over the course of those 5 years, it's just under $9,000 of increase, 7.3% compounded annual growth rate. That means 7.3% on average every single year is the amount of change we've been making to that. Remember what our PPR change is, 6.3%. Last year was 7%. The years before that, 3, 2, small numbers, right? So when we've been making this type of shift over this kind of time, again, should demonstrate that this is a long-standing effort that we have been making significant progress towards. On the professional technical schedule, you'll see it going from 41.2 to basically 48.5. That's a $7,200 increase, 3.3% CAGR on that. SSP is a new schedule, so it doesn't have a 5-year trend yet. And so with all that good news, where's the but? Yeah, but. We've done all of this on the cost of the administration team. $65,000 up to $71,000. It's $6,000 increase over the 5-year span, 1.9% CAGR. So we have not only increased everyone else on a higher percentage basis, we've also increased them on a raw dollar basis more. That is reflective of this pursuit and this pursuit of valuing all people that we've been doing over this 5-year term. Normally what you would see is higher dollars with lower percentages with higher dollars. And so that we're not seeing that here. We're seeing lower percentages and lower dollars, both, when higher percentages and higher dollars. That is a strategy for correction. It's not a strategy for long term. And so we're reaching this point of needing to start to bring these annual changes together. Highlight over here on the right side of this column, this change. This is the change in the base rate again for these schedules. So the year-over-year change in base rate is 6.6% for the license schedule. It's actually 6.8, and that's the scheduled base. So let me clarify. The reason I've got 2 lines here on licenses, there's the scheduled base, and then there's also a supplemental pay that teachers receive from our MLO, because that's what was passed in our MLO language back in 2016. Teacher pay was part of one of the priorities. And so that is part of the additional compensation. So that's why the scheduled base is 42,000. The minimum amount that any teacher would get in that supplemental piece is $720. The average is about 1,000 actually. So that's why 42.7 is now our base, our all-in base, and that's up 6.8%, projecting to be 6.8% increase next year versus this year. The license pay base, again, or the license pay, the hourly pay base, so that minimum wage rate, D49, the minimum wage, is going up 9.4%. The Prof Tech 5.9, the SSP 9.2, again, because that's an area of focus to try and compete better and not have the vacancies that we've had there. Administration is 3.3. It's this gap between 3.3 and 9 that it's becoming more problematic, and so we're going to have to, in the future, we're going to have to figure out a way to narrow that gap. Down here underneath, and it's done in gray because it's not intended to be the highlight of the schedule, but is intended to be something that we refer to, and that is a measurement of what is the base pay difference between the administrative schedule and the licensed pay schedule, i.e. the teacher schedule. What we were experiencing in the teens was this escalating difference, and that's again what pointed us to the need that we needed to adjust the way that the teacher pay schedule was working, because we were getting almost to the point where the gap was almost a 2x, where the administrator base pay was twice what the licensed base pay was. That was not a good trend that we are on. It was not going to be a good place for us to be. So we changed the schedules. We were able then to pursue this really somewhat fairly aggressive change in teacher base pay through all of this. And that allowed us to then see that gap start to shrink back down. Hovered a little bit on a dollar basis, but look at the difference in the percentage basis really started to come down a lot. So where we were close, we were at 94%, meaning again, we were almost 2x. Now we're down to 70%. So I'm going to keep saying this frequently, but we have done a lot, and we continue to do a lot to focus on improving pay. And it has been a long-term, multi-year effort. What you have beyond this is 35 pages worth of detailed, beautiful spreadsheets that give you all kinds of numbers and iterations, variances by dollar, variances by percentage, everything, and full tables, because this is all done very formulaic. But really, this is the key. This is the key, is this first page, and also what is key is this table on the cover sheet, because this is the results of the modeling that we do, taking all those pay schedules, modeling it against the 1,900 people we've got, and what does it mean? So we've hit very precisely again that 6.4% number when we were aiming for 6.3. So we've gone aggressive, just a little bit to the high side of that, and we've done that with the recognition and permission with the zone leader team, with Ron and Paul Anderson and HR. So we've all collaborated and contributed to this as we have in every single year. Questions?
Yeah, I have a question specifically about the professional technical.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there has been some concerns about our in-house, like welders, people who are technicians, etc., being paid like a base pay, but not necessarily being paid for their credentials. Do we have some sort of, if you have this licensure or you have this credential, that your pay increases based on the credentialing that you have, so you don't have to outsource or find other people, etc.?
Yeah, good question. The answer is we don't have that yet. It is queued. We talked about it just in our last VCT meeting, Val Collaboration Team meeting that we had 2-3 weeks ago at the beginning of the month here. And that team is had started some work in this regard before the pandemic. So we kind of had some work, just like we had worked on this issue, on the anniversary pay, and on the double step. Those were the three things that we'd worked with VCT before pandemic. We've been able to come back and circle back and pick up the anniversary pay and the double step. The one remaining for us to get to is this topic, which we'll be getting to into the fall of next year. And we'll be talking about this both in the Prof Tech and also the ESP staffing, because I think maybe the scenario you're talking about is actually more of an ESP scenario than a Prof Tech scenario, but both have the same situation in play.
So every current employee will see the pay increase in accordance with the categories. And then it will also apply to any new positions that has not been hired yet. Is that correct?
Right, correct. How'd I do that, Dave? Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. I'm sorry, continue.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah.
Is it possible for somebody, let's say, one of the hourly people, only because I've been asked this question here recently, who's been, say, here 6 years, getting a certain pay, is it possible that they could get paid less than a new hire?
So glad you asked that question. The answer is no. Emphatically, it's a no. Unfortunately, some of this gets way too complicated, but we have a specific algebraic formula that we place new hires with. The whole reason that formula exists is to make sure that scenario does not happen. So we make sure that people are placed at an appropriate level, and we're honoring the people that have been with us and stayed with us.
Maybe not now, because it may take a long time. I kind of like to understand the spread thing a little bit more, but it doesn't have to be tonight.
Okay. So typically what we do, at this point is we present these pay schedules looking for any concerns or feedback. We would move these for action and approval at the May regular meeting, but what we will be doing between now and then is preparing the 1,900 different agreements we have to do with our staff, 900 contracts with teachers, and 1,000 notices of assignment with all other staff to have those prepared so that after we would, in theory, approve these in May, then those get delivered to those staff shortly thereafter.
So this starts in September, right? Or August?
Yes, so the new fiscal year, of course, starts July 1st. Our pay calendars, there's really two pay calendars. Teachers are paid on an annual cycle that their first paycheck of the new year is the September paycheck. So that means the last paycheck of the previous year is the August pay. Okay, so for a teacher, they would see this in a September paycheck. All other staff is more of an August to July cycle. So their first paycheck of the new year is August, and the last paycheck of the old year is the July check. We do have a caveat based on some feedback from teachers and also run through VCT that for teacher pay specifically, we give brand new teachers, kind of meaning right out of school, first job type of thing, the opportunity to take their first year's pay over 13 months rather than 12. So we give them the opportunity to get that first paycheck in August. And then it goes through the following August, so it is 13 months, but it helps them not have to wait all the way till September for your very first ever paycheck, right? So.
Excellent idea.
Yeah.
Okay, with that said, can we move on to can we move this forward for vote?
Yes?
Yes.
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 Yes. So this is in compliance with our objective. Okay.
Thank you. Moving on. Legislative update?
You have 10 minutes.
10 minutes?
That is it.
I'm not going to use more than that. I'm not even going to use that.
Good.
Okay.
I'll hold you to it.
Thank you. Brett Ridgway, Chief Business Officer. Quick legislative update, as I mentioned at our regular meeting earlier this month, that we had a bill that had been drafted for mill levy override revenue. And that was getting into the process. And the good news is that it is halfway through the process. It was a Senate bill introduced on the Senate side. We had our first hearing in the Senate Education Committee last week. It passed out of Senate Education Committee by a vote of 5-2. Referred to Senate Appropriations Committee this week on Tuesday. It passed out of Senate Appropriations by a vote of 7-0, and they attached $20 million to it. Then it went to the Senate floor. It passed out of the Senate floor 27-7. So our Senate path is complete really quickly, and now we're moving on to the House side. So just to restate what this is about, this is something I've been working on for 6-7 years, to try and bring our community some equal credit for the mill levy overrides that they are contributing to our school district. Equal credit meaning that their contributions can generate a similar effect as other districts. And the reason that they don't is because of this disparity in assessed value, because we are a residential community, because residential property is assessed at 1/4 the rate that non-residential property is. So our district's friends to the west that have much more non-residential property, they have this kind of inherent advantage that their homeowners don't have to pay as much as what our homeowners would have to do to provide the same amount of result. This mill levy override equalization would recognize that fact as truth and make some accommodation for that. So it's really a great place for it to be. It's exciting for us to finally be in this position after all these years of investment of time and effort. And so I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get this across the finish line. That number, that $20 million number, what it would mean for us, by the way, that funds the program at about a 30% level. The correct initial investment would have been $65 million at the state level. Our share, the D49 share of that number, of the $20 million number, would be about $2.5 million. And again, what's good about this is it's game-changing money. It's balance-changing money. This is $2.5 million that we get that D20 doesn't get and that D11 doesn't get, right? Versus PPR, when ours goes up 6.3%, theirs is going up 6.3%. We're not changing the mix. This is something that we've been pursuing so that we can change that mix, so we can bring some competitive balance to what we experience. So that early number that I talked about being 14% below D20 and 30% D11, it'll start to tighten that up. $2 million isn't going to do that. $10 million, which would have been the full funded number, would have done that to about a 40% level. So we're getting there. Getting this policy in statute, getting it established, and basically getting its place in line with the other things that are talked about at the state level, like the negative factor, like special education funding, so many others, CLDE, ELL funding. Those are all things free at-risk funding. These are all things that are kind of sitting in line, waiting for funding. We want this to be able to have its place in that conversation. So I've provided you, the bill drafts, the financial notes that go with the bill draft. Also, I gave you a draft of the testimony that I provided to the Senate Ed Committee last week. So that all is there in case you want to see it. You probably don't. It's not really an easy or a fun read, but it's there in case you want to.
I just noticed that your comments, at least on my board docs, are kind of cut off. I don't have your full testimony, so it starts at halfway through a sentence. And so I didn't know if that was just uploaded wrong, but actually I would like to read what your testimony was.
Well, I will say, this is not written in perfect English, because this is what I was referring to as I was talking. So this is kind of, in a way, some bullet point statements. There's fragments and stuff. So if that's what you're saying is hey, that doesn't sound like a whole sentence, you're probably right, because I wasn't writing it to be produced to someone in written form. I was writing it to be my notes for the speaking presentation.
Even what I see on the screen is different than what I have on
Red button, please.
Okay.
Gotta turn your mic on.
I was just saying, what I'm seeing on the screen right here doesn't match what I'm seeing here. Do you see?
Okay, well, this is what's on board docs. This machine is what's showing on board docs, so maybe.
Could be that your computer's not catching up with the download.
Yeah, okay.
But we'll see.
Okay, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, I got a couple questions. Number one, does this raise taxes?
No,
Okay. Number two, I should have been during Ron's briefing, but reiterate what our negative factor is this past year, the current year. $17.5 million.
17 million, is that what,
Yeah. So you guys know what the negative factor is? Negative factor is the money that we should have got from the state that the state takes back.
It's the way the state balances the budget.
$17 million. We wouldn't have problems if we would get that. So that's a legislative issue, and this is hopefully used to balance that.
It definitely helps. Again, there are districts that have been able to overcome their impact, their relative impact of the negative factor by having mill levy overrides. Other districts have not been able to do that. So it's, again, this is where this disparity has kind of gotten bigger especially over these last 10 years. When we, in the early 2000s, total mill levy overrides in the state were like 300 million to 500 million. Now it's 1.4 billion. And the districts that are getting that are the districts that have low assessed value. Or, I'm sorry, low assessed, say it differently, high assessed value per student. It requires low investment from the community. A high assessed value per student, meaning there's a lot of value for every student they're trying to support. So that means to provide a good number for that student's experience, it requires a very small investment on an individual taxpayer basis.
Brett, I know you've worked your tail off to get this far, and I want to congratulate you for an amazing breakthrough here, that you're finally out of committee and that you're already through one side of the house. So, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm still only halfway there, so I'm trying not to get too excited too quick, because this is politics, right? You don't ever count your chickens first. But things look really pretty good on it. So thank you. I'll circle back. I don't have anything in the package about this, but I talked to you earlier, maybe a couple months ago, about this idea of a collective bargaining bill and how that would require or enable small groups in work environments to create a negotiating unit and require collective bargaining. The collective all of education across the state has been pushing against this, saying, no, this is not something that should be impressed upon us. It should be something that's decided, at an entity level. And so fortunately, all of that has been stripped out. So all the public entities have been taken out of that bill. So I don't know whether if that bill will continue to survive or not. In some ways, I'd rather it go through, because if it doesn't go through, then it'll come back again. And when it comes back again, it'll come back with everything in it again, right? So I don't know. I don't know what the right path is at.
Okay, you passed 8 minutes.
Okay. One more bill was an innovation zones bill. I know Peter took a look at that and opined on that. I just included that for your reading as well, if you'd like.
Cocktail Party Smart, what is it?
Right now, if you want to have a local board, you have to operate as a charter school. If you want to have an alternate governance structure, maybe a university sponsor or something like that, there isn't a provision in law for that. So this is an example of Colorado adding something that many other states have, which is the ability for an innovation school, which is not a chartered school, it's not an authorized school, but it's an operated school. But this is an opportunity for an innovation school to select an alternative form of governance. So you could actually have an innovation school or a contract school operated or contracted through the district that had its own board.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we're on to policy and procedure review. For the board's edification, we actually don't have any policies or procedures to review right now. We are behind. Okay, Donna used to put all those together, and so we are about 2 months behind on that. Chief officers, you're still responsible to update your policies. Okay, you don't get off the hook for that. I'm expecting a lot of policies to come to us in the May, that's someone else's time, in the May work session. Okay? And you know how I feel about,
Well, I'm sorry, but we don't have a May work session, so it'll come in the June work session, though.
okay, so
Yeah.
the June session, it's gonna be even this much more. Okay? And you know how I feel about making sure that those policies are updated. Okay? If the board, there's a calendar that we do so we don't get hammered, like we will. But if there's a policy that maybe should have taken place February, March, April, May, June now, and it's something you're interested in being reviewed and it's not on the list, make sure you let us know, because it takes time for them to review it. Okay? Something like, I don't know, fiscal exigency and emergency policies, which I've asked for 2 years ago. So I'd like to see those. And the board at the time supported me, so I would like to see those on the list. One would have to be created, one would have to be refined. And I talked to you about it, and you said, yeah. Just like that. Okay. Any other policies that we have to review, make sure we get an early look at? Okay, anyway, Chief Officer contract status, I guess that's me again. Okay, so at agenda setting, we had, Ivy and I discussed this, and it's basically just to give you status. The Board of Education needs to review chief officer contracts and adhere to the timeline for action as originally proposed. It was originally proposed that we would actually have the contracts for vote in the regular session in May. Performance metrics are not ready to be presented as part of the chief officer contracts at this time. Getting the performance metrics correct will take more time, and that is directly from Tony Fontana, who's helping us with those. He's a third-party contractor that the board has asked in collaboration with the administration to help us develop these things, not only at the chief officer level, but at the district level, chief officer, looking at other things. Possibly even getting some of the policies that govern that in place, okay? So getting the performance metrics correct will take more time. Performance metrics can be adopted by the Board of Education after the contracts are issued, and it's tied to performance before the new school year, 2022 and 2023. This will have the same effect as if they were attached to the contract. Evaluation of performance period is still the same. It should say still the same, not then same. An action is required to ensure we have leadership in place and planning on the end of the school year and for the next new school year. And talking to Tony, he said that he recommended, I asked him for a recommendation, he said this would be an appropriate course of action. If Brett Mello was here, he would say the same thing. So if you have questions, I will address them. Otherwise, I'd like to ask for consensus to move this forward for a vote, and we would have the actual contracts. I think legally we're allowed to have those contracts available for the May meeting, correct? Okay, because Brad's not here to ask, but I'm pretty sure he said yeah, because that's public. Okay, so can I have consensus to?
Done. I got a question. Will the benchmarks, which sounds like it's going to be quite comprehensive, will that be a part of an amendment towards the contract? What is it going to look like? Just something?
To be honest with you, I don't know. Tony said basically the performance metrics that would apply, because we're looking at performance metrics for the district and the Board of Education. What are we responsible to the public for as far as achievement and outcomes, right? They're going to be responsible for executing that. They will have those metrics as part of their performance evaluations, which can come later but should come before July 1st. And Tony said, between now and then, it is plenty of time to get that into the June for us to vote. Okay, now that's what he told me.
He also said June when I spoke with him.
Say again?
He told me June as well.
Okay.
Just to let you know that.
Okay, so can I have That consensus? I don't know that consensus is required, because this was really just a discussion item, because Ivy had expressed concerns during agenda setting, and I wanted to address them. So because we had consent, because we voted in February to do it in May, I don't think we need consensus, but I'm just, I'm going to ask you guys, any other questions?
So
Let's
this
move-
would be for the upcoming contract for the new school
For
year?
the new school year,
Yes.
Okay.
You have, yes.
okay? So,
Yes.
yes?
Yes.
Okay. Now, performance for this year still falls under the old system. And that will come out later, correct? In the fall, yeah, to August, September, October. I'd like consideration to be made, and this is not the exact proper time, but just basically make the, consider, based on recommendations from the chiefs and possibly Tony, that evaluations come out basically the same time, so that we're not delaying them as much. We did delay them like this because we wanted to save time and not take up so much in the meeting, but there's, possibly consideration of doing them all at once, which takes a lot longer and takes a lot more effort and dedication from the board, just so you're aware. But that was something I did talk to Tony today. It's not a proposal. It's something to keep in the back of your mind and then get input from you guys. Because we do all staff at the end of June. Maybe we do everybody at the end of that reporting period and just kind of go through that pain of getting it over with. Okay? Something to think about. Okay? And again, you guys have input to that. Okay? On to
Wait,
Chief.
one other thing. Do we have an update on where we're standing with the contract with Tony?
Yeah, it's been signed. Tony's aware of it. He has it. He says his CSS, that lady who sent it, should have it. It was signed Monday, so he should have it available to sign. Or he's got I don't think there was a line to actually sign, so I think he just signed in blank space. And I told him, you should have it, sign it. Okay? Any questions?
Since we're on the topic of Tony, I was very impressed when I met with him today. I felt like he asked really good questions, and I think that's going to be a big help.
Getting a lot of head shakes. Possibly to better understand the district, he might actually ask us to talk to other people in the district, which will help us further refine direct district level metrics. Okay? And we're on to Education Officer Report, 5 minutes.
So as I think almost every zone report in the report mentions, this is the senior season. End of year always has a lot of energy. Quite a few of the zone reports mentioned our progress on CMAS. I'll highlight one example at Evans. They had one single fifth grade student that opted out. Everybody else took CMAS. That's really impressive, particularly given what we've come through. So there's a lot of great detail. I know you all appreciate that summary page, and I appreciate our different leaders in the education office putting that together. But there's a lot of fun detail and just kind of crunchy and interesting bits further in, and I'll just share one of them. On April 29th, Mr. William Yerger at Sand Creek High School has coordinated and pulled together a Mobile Army Surgical Hospital, MASH, simulation, which is going to bring together community providers and first responders and professionals in a series of kind of stations and experiences for students. And this is the kind of discretionary effort going above and beyond. It's an engaged leader in Mr. Yerger engaging the students and engaging the community members. So there are some other things that are, I think, comparably exciting in there, but I will let you dig in a little bit further. We're just really proud of the many educators who, despite the challenges of the last 2 years, continue to deliver creative and compelling experiences for our students.
And when are we getting an invitation to see MASH?
About 30 seconds ago. It's on April 29th at Sand Creek High School, and I'll make sure that Carrie and I share the details and the timing of it. Sand Creek.
Sand Creek. My brain functions on a actual written electronic invitation, so I can remember it. Yes.
Not all day, we'll provide the timing.
Thank you. And, okay, operations.
The only thing that I'll point out of the operations report or highlight is we are continuing to work with Norwood Development on timeline for starting construction at the Elevations Middle School. We still do not have full clarity on this as they are continuing to work through the issues with the jurisdiction that's needed for the construction to proceed for the development and the coordination that needs to take place with the Army Corps of Engineers. We don't have clarity on that yet, and we're continuing to watch it. We continue to be concerned until we have that clarity. Outside of that, nothing else to add on top of what's on the report.
I like how it's worded. The delayed start still does not have a firm start date. I like that. I can understand that kind of language. These reports are very, very important for us to read, and it's very, very important for the public to read because it does give you those updates that a lot of you are looking for. Chief Business Officer.
Nothing to add. This meeting has been a lot about business anyway, so.
Quick question. It was like 6 to 8 months ago now. I can't remember the exact month, but you used to have a lot more details about expenditures and stuff like that. We just don't include that anymore then? Or is this just in the check register on the website?
The check registers always just go directly to the website, yes. No, I don't usually put it in this report. I don't know what we might be referring to 6, 8 months ago. I mean, there's different ebb and flows to what we put in here. We might be thinking about maybe the vendor report, the external partners and vendors report, but that's a once a year thing. Yeah.
Just a quick question for our resident teacher. Don't students get in trouble for packing up before the class is over?
My students do, yes.
Okay, and we are adjourned at 9:24. Thank you all for participation and for the questions, and talk to you soon.